everybody. This is Charlotte White. I'm from Bakersfield, California. This is a project that we're doing for homecoming for Wayland Baptist University in Plainview, Texas. I was a student there starting in 1966 through 1968. I then transferred to the University of Wyoming in Laramie. I was a Colorado student, and so Wayland did not have my major. And when I left Wayland, actually, I was sick with mono. And so I look back favorably on my years at Wayland. There was only one art teacher there, but I think he did an okay job. Today, we're going to be doing what I'm going to be calling a, excuse me, a West Texas scene, including blue bonnets in the foreground, and a windmill with trees in the background. And we're looking at the early morning. Now this is a watercolor that I prepared in advance for this presentation. Today we're going to be working in acrylics. I'm going to move the watercolor off of the screen. All of you should have a basic set of acrylic paints. This is my palette right here. I've prepared it in advance so that I have just my basic colors to get started. And you will also want a palette knife. This is an old palette knife, but it works. If you don't have a palette knife, you can use a plastic knife from, say, your picnic set, something of that nature. You'll also need 2 containers of water. Today I'm using water containers from the deli. I get salads at the deli and then I wash them out and use them for water. You'll want 2 containers of water, one for washing your brush off, and then if you want water, fresh water, you'll want fresh water for the second one. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a ruler, and this, today I'm working on 11 by 14 size canvas. You could be using a canvas or canvas board. That's totally your choice. Because I want more sky and less ground, fewer flowers, I came 3 inches from the bottom of my canvas, and laying my ruler on my canvas, I drew a line 3 inches from the bottom. That way I'm going to have a large sky. One of the things I remember about West Texas are the big skies and of course the tornadoes. I think we all ran to the basement more than once. If you lived on campus, you know exactly what I'm talking about there. Okay. So today, this is my reference photograph that I took off online. I haven't been in Plainview for at least 20 years, maybe longer. I teach school still. I'm 72 when I teach schools. I'm now technically retired from Kern High School District, but I teach part-time for Valley Oaks Charter School, Bakersfield College Levin Center, and Bakersfield Art Center. So in retirement, we can continue to paint. So if you want to take a picture, a photograph of this so that you have a reference to think about while you're working, you're welcome to do that. If not, don't worry about it. I'm going to walk you through step by step what we're doing. Okay. Time to time, I'm going to show you my palette. So right now, the first thing we're going to be mixing, you will also need paper towels, by the way. If you don't have paper towels, you're going to want one. You'll probably want to keep one in your left hand if you're a right-handed painter. So now then what I'm doing is I'm going to clean my palette, my brush, or my palette knife. Okay, the first color I'm going to be mixing is a peach. Now, peach is created with white and orange. So as you can see, I'm going to start mixing some white with a little bit of orange. And because I'm going to do quite a bit of sky, this is where we're going to start. All right, now I'm going to move the palette out of the way. you're going to take, this is approximately a 1.5 inch brush across here. And so we want to grab some of this peach color. We're going to come right down to the line. And this is the horizon line. For those of you that love vocabulary, the horizon line is where the earth meets the sky. And because I'm doing an early morning piece, I'm going to start very carefully with my sky. So you're going to mix some orange with a lot of white so that you can make the beginning of a sky. You're going to come now back up a little bit more. We're going to use horizontal strokes. We're going to pull the paint all the way across. Now, if we were in person, I would probably be painting on a 16 by 20 canvas. But because we're doing this online, I have chosen to go with a smaller presentation. All right, now, I'm going to put a little bit of yellow. I'm going to pretend that right here is where the sun is coming up, and I'm going to put a little yellow in the sky, as though the sun was coming up and introducing a little tiny bit of yellow. Smooth that out so it's nice and smooth. Then I'm going to take a little white. I want to lighten it up just a little bit right there in the middle. Now that is not the exact middle of my canvas. It's a little left of the center. I tend to like to have things off center. All right. And now I'm going to wipe the excess acrylic paint onto my paper towel. I'm going to go over to my water and clean my brush. All right. Next, to show you my palette, I'm going to take a little bit of red and a little bit of blue and some white. And so what I'm making is purple or violet. As you can see, there comes the violet. I'm going to lay this down so I can get some more white on my palette. I wish I had two cameras so I could show you what was happening with my palette at the same time. Now this is a little bit on the blue side, so I'm going to take a little bit more of the red. Red and blue mixed together to make violet. All right, that violet will probably work. Going back to my brush. Now, as you can see, this is really a dark violet. So it's making very much a line right across here. So you and I are going to work together to get rid of that feeling of a line. Going all the way to our edges. Taking a little bit of water, dipping my brush in water just a tiny bit. Whoops, there was a dribble. I'm going to pull up some of this violet down into the peach. So we get a nice transition in the sky. Of course, we don't want a severe line there. Putting a little more violet on the brush. Now this is one way of making a really super, super easy sky. For some reason, I seem to like 3 colors in my sky, if not 4. I'm going to wipe the excess paint off my brush onto my paper towel. Then I'm going to clean my brush. So all right. Okay, now I'm going to take some white and mix it with a little bit of a blue. All right, so I'm going to take white, mix it with the blue to make a light blue. Okay, once again, I'm taking my 2-inch brush. Coming up into the light blue. And go right along that skyline there. Pulling the 2 together. Doing a nice horizontal. I'm going to go back into the purple because I want to soften this line up here a little bit. So I'm going back into the violet purple and blending the 2 together. Now I'm going to take a little bit of the darker blue. As you look at the sky, the top, it's always darker. Do horizontal strokes. I'm going to clean my brush a little bit. Looks like I did something right there. So I'm going to smooth it out a little bit. I just spilled some water. So now I've got this little ocean right here in the sky. I'm trying to pick it up by just blotting it a tiny bit. That can happen when your water is too close to your painting. Working online means I'm working in a smaller space than I normally would do so. All right. Okay. So we now have a nice transition in our sky. We're now going to take some white. Just dip your brush into your white, and we're going to start doing some cloud formations. A little bit of like a cumulus cloud, perhaps, a little fluffy clouds up in the sky. Remember, sometimes in the morning you look up, there's no sky, clouds anywhere. A couple hours later, you look up and there is a couple of little clouds on the horizon. You can bring clouds down. All right, I'm going to take a number 2 brush now, for those of you that like to keep track of what size brushes I'm using. I'm changing from the 1/2 inch wide. And the 1/2 inch wide is a number 8, for those of you that like to know what size brush is she using. Do some dragging like so. Just bring that cloud right across. I normally like 2 to 3 cloud formations. Think more cumulus clouds, a little billowy. The bottom of this one, I'm going to darken it up a little bit. Take some red and blue, making a nice violet, purple color. Come back in here. Do a little bit of dragging underneath the cloud formation. You want to get rid of the stripiness in your skies. That you want to have more than one color. It makes the sky much more interesting. I'll put a little bit more up in here to get rid of that line. Then do some vertical striping with your brush. Change the direction your brush is moving occasionally. Makes it more interesting. All right. All right. Now I'm mixing yellow with green to make yellow green. I want to have, so I'm going to put some yellow green. I'm going to pretend there's some grass down here. All right, my painting is too wet at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute, so you will not hear my blow dryer. I'm going to turn the blow dryer on. I'm going to do some drying, and then I'll come back to you. Go ahead and work on your sky while I'm doing this. And unmuting, as you can see, I had some water that took off running across the canvas. So for example, right here, I can still see it. So I'm going to go like this and try and lift up that run. Occasionally that happens, especially since we're using a water base. And put some more paint back in there. And back right in there and touching that up a little bit. Washing the brush again. Picking up some more of the peach color. Touch that up just a tad bit. All right. All right, so now I have a nice sky. It's a little on the dark side. Remember, it's early morning. All right, so now I'm going to take the yellow and green. I'm going to put in a pasture here, just a little bit. Coming right up to that skyline. So we have nice definition here. It does not have to be perfectly straight. If you drew your line, you can probably drag your brush just right along that and it'll be okay. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to some of my dark greens and we're going to start putting in some trees. Over here is going to be like a low-lying tree. Now this particular green has a lot of blue in it, as you can tell. I think I need to change back to my smaller brush. Between using brushes, always clean your brush. Acrylic paint can dry very fast. It can dry faster than you want it to dry. And it can ruin a good brush. And I try and keep my oil painting brushes separate from my acrylic brushes, but it doesn't always work. All right. So, if you have brown, great. If you don't, you're going to use black. The set of paints that I bought for you to use in this presentation does not have brown. So we're going to use black. Now, historically, a lot of artists decided they did not want to use black. And so they tried to mix all their colors to make their own blacks or their own darks, and it worked out very well. I'm going to put some dark right along the bottom here. So these would be like the branches coming up from the dirt. Okay, I'm going to come over here. You might try and turn your brush upside down so that you are starting from the earth and moving up to give the feeling of a bush. Now I like blue-purple shadows, so I'm going to take some blue and just drop it down here and start the feeling of some shadows down here. Okay, I'm going to use light green and dark green. This is kind of like a dabbing movement. I want the sky to show through. So as you're painting, try and just dab and not pull the brush. Mixing yellow with green to make a light green. So you can turn your brush upside down, let it touch the earth and pull up. I'm going to come over here. The opposite side of the canvas. Still a little soupy over here. Put in the bottom of the bush using some drag marks. I'll make a tree right here. Sometimes I turn my canvas upside down when I want to make trees. You can also just turn your brush upside down and do some pulling of colors. Start at a branch and then pull. In more of what would be the middle of the tree, you want it darker. Bring some of your color over your branches. Top of your tree, you could see through it more. Okay, I'm going to mute my screen again. All right, as you're moving in your painting, anytime that you think your painting is too wet, please stop and blow dry. The more you blow dry and get your canvas a little bit more on the dry side, the happier you'll be. Always keep your paint brushes nice and clean. Now, if you have brown, I would have preferred doing this in brown. But the package of paints that I bought for this demonstration did not have brown. So sometimes those are the choices that we make of necessity, because I didn't want you to have to buy every color in the rainbow or every color in the art store to do this project. And I'm putting some, I love dark blue shadows, dark blue purple shadows. So I'm just putting a little bit right along this horizon line. I'm pulling a little bit of the shadow up into the composition. You don't want your trees to look like popsicles or mountains necessarily. You can go back and improve on them as you would like. We'll put a few more bushes right along this horizon line, as though there were trees growing in the background. You can just see the tops of them. Try and make them different shapes. So you can bring some of that darker green down into your light greens here. Now, as you're working, don't be surprised if you've used a total of 10 paper towels. It can be as you're working, because you want to keep your paints as clean as you can. You may find that helpful. Okay, next, we're going to do some flowers. Now, it's okay if your flowers don't look like bluebonnets. It's challenging sometimes to get exactly the right color that you want. So I'm mixing blue with white. I'm going to leave some dark blues, but mixing some white here on the palette with my palette knife. Now we're going to be using shades of green, as though there was some grass growing out here, as well as the bottom part of the plant is pretty green. At this point, I'm using a number 2 brush. All right, so we're going to come right up over that little bit of edge there. We're doing a vertical stroke. Occasionally, we'll dab a little of the darker blue. This field is full of flowers. Now I'm going to take a little bit of the light green do some vertical strokes in the light green. Take some of the dark green and do the same. You want to cover up your canvas. You don't want any canvas showing through. There will be clumps of flowers, and then there will be grass showing around them. You may want to do some horizontal strokes occasionally. Anywhere you see white canvas, feel free to do a vertical stroke. Now remember, just because we said these were bluebonnets, that doesn't mean they have to be look totally like bluebonnets, because we're not painting each little flower. We're not doing a botanical painting. We're using acrylic paints with a limited palette. We are limited by the colors that are on our palette, the colors that we have, the tubes of paint that we purchase. And we're also doing this painting in a limited time frame. Makes me think of Bob Ross on television. He would have done this painting in 30 minutes. Well, good luck with that. Sometimes I have students come into my class and they say, I want to paint like Bob Ross. And I'm like, oh, good. And then I kind of laugh and smile and go, okay, got another Bob Ross enthusiast here. Now, Bob would never have blow dried, or if he did, you didn't see it. The magic of television, he would stop the camera occasionally. And you did not see the magic when he stopped the camera. But you want a variegated, you don't want little straight lines that are just like little soldiers going across your field. You're going to vary the dark green, the light green, the dark blue, the light blue. And when we're finished, every painting will be different, which is kind of cool. That's a 1960s word for you guys. Today, the kids would say, awesome. Now, if you leave some white showing, don't worry about it. My goal is that you're going to enjoy what you're doing. Now, if you see a big space that you don't have any green showing through, go back to your yellow green or your dark green. It's okay if your yellow green has more yellow than green. Remember, if you remember from your Texas history class, Lady Bird Johnson, the wife of President Johnson, her project or her desire was to increase wildflowers growing along our highways, especially in the state of Texas. So she had this campaign. I was in the 4th, 5th, and 6th, 7th grade in Texas. So I remember that. I had a grandparents who lived in Palestine. So we would drive to Palestine. We'd drive to Fort Worth. And we'd go over to New Mexico. So we were able to see lots of wildflowers planted, just sprinkled. She would just encourage people to just sprinkle seeds along the highway. And I always thought that was a wonderful, wonderful project. I thought she was an awesome First Lady. Bit of trivia, my mother graduated from Wayland. My dad ended up graduating from Eastern New Mexico University with a religion major. That's how I ended up in Plainview with my parents. And I appreciated they had scholarships or grants for kids that their parents were ministers. So I was able to take advantage of that. Now think a little bit about where your shadows are in your dirt. I'm taking dark blue because I love a blue-purple shadow. I'm putting a little bit of blue-purple down here to establish some shadows. Okay. I'm going to take some white and I'm going to go back in and I'm going to choose some places to dab bits of white and drag down, do a vertical stroke. Many times it seems like the flower has some white in it, in the blossoms. So just do some little dabbing of white to create that feeling. So it's either a reflection, the sun is hitting on the blossom, once again, if you haven't covered your canvas 100%, that's okay. Just don't worry about it. It's going to be great. The important thing is that we've gathered together for this opportunity. Okay, now I'm going to blow dry again, and then I'm going to do the windmill. So. If you need to blow dry, because we're going to put a windmill, we're not going to put it exactly in the middle. We're going to bring it over a little bit. So the windmill, this is the midpoint of the painting. We're not doing it right in the middle. We're going to shift it over a little bit. And it's going to come up into the sky. So I'm going to blow dry right now. So I'm going to mute and blow dry the painting so that I can then lay my hand on it to do the windmill. Okay, I'm back now. I hope all of you took a moment to blow dry. You notice that I had somehow got some light green up in my sky, which I did not notice until I turned off the mic and realized, oh my gosh, there's green in my sky. So I tried to clean that up. If I'm not happy with it once I'm finished, I will go back in again. But I want us to do our windmill next. All right. Now we're going to do it first in pencil. And then we're going to use a zero brush. This is a zero brush that is more of a craft brush. It's a round zero, but it gives a very small point. But to do that, to do the windmill, we're going to come here and we're going to decide, we're going to use our ruler for positioning. And so where do we want it? Most artists would prefer not to put the windmill exactly in the middle of the painting. So if I lay my ruler down, this is a 14-inch, so that means 7. So right here is the center of my canvas. So that's why I'm going to move my windmill either left or right. And you get to decide where you want to do it. Okay, I'm going to lay my ruler down. I know that the 7-inch is my halfway point. So I think I'm going to come over to the 5-inch. Now using my ruler, I'm going to lay it down and I'm going to establish the center line of my windmill. And I want it to come up higher than this tree. I don't want my windmill and that tree to be, say, the same height. So that means I need to come on up a little bit farther. So at this point, my windmill would be 5.5 inches tall. I'm going to make a mark and then reinforce it like so. Now that will be the pipe that's going the very exact center of, now I'm going to do a total of 4 more lines. So going back to that center point, there's one. I want to make another one over here, a little bit close to that first one. Now, those of you that are water people from Texas are going to probably complain about this windmill. Here in California, we do have some of these windmills. Actually, we have a lot of windmills, but they're energy related. But we do have some old on farms. We've got some old windmills that are providing water for farm animals. Okay, so now this line is going to go across to this one. So we're going to go like that, and we're going to come up a little bit, and we're going to go that way. Then we're going to come up here. We're going to repeat the same. I think we need another crossbar right here. Come up a little bit higher there. we're using our pencil for a reason, because once we put the paint down on this windmill, we do not want to make any changes on it. All right. Now we're going to do some other X lines through here, but for now, we're just going to get started on our windmill. We're going to take our number 0 brush, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start right here, and we're going to go over our pencil lines. Now I know these are gray metal, sheet metal, but we're going to start with it being black, and then we will come back with some detailing. So I'm going to take a little bit of white. Okay, going back to our black. Now remember, this is a painting. It's not a craft. It does not have to be exact. Dip a little water on your brush, then dip it into your black, and then pull to the center of your circle. Now we are not going to put as many spokes on this wheel. We're now going to put the line in right here. So we're just working on the blades just a tiny bit. I'm going to get a little bit of white. Just going to lay it down just a tad bit like this. It's a little bit of reflection. Try not to do too much or you're going to lose the feeling of your blades. Put a dot right there in the middle. All right, now I'm going to clean up my brush again. I want to get rid of that white. Now, as I put my brush into my paint, I roll it a little bit to keep my point really short. Now, I've noticed that some of the windmills have only 4, but some of them have 5. And so I have chosen to have 5. So now I'm going to start at the top. I am laying my hand down on my canvas. We're going to start at the top and we're going to work down. Now today I am working vertically. I'm using a camera rather than working, no, excuse me, I'm working horizontally rather than vertical. That way I can do this presentation without assistance. I don't need to have a cameraman behind me. If we were doing this in person, possibly we would have a cameraman and I would be working vertically. Try and keep your brush really thin. Even with a zero brush, and dragging very slowly and carefully, my lines are probably thicker than I would like to have them. Try not to go over them too much. The more you go over them, the wider they get. They don't have to be totally solid. If some of the sky is, because we're working on canvas, try and work with a light touch. Try only have paint on the tip of your brush. Come down again, doing that center pipe. Now, some watercolors have a tank down here. So after we finish this, if you want to add a tank, feel free to. So I'm bringing this pipe down in front of that bush so that it will look like the bush is behind. Try and keep your brush strokes even, so you have a nice feeling in your painting. Okay, now I'm just making a few little marks on the dirt here, the feeling that the windmill has created a shadow. I'm going to do some suggesting of lines. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to use just the tip of the brush and I'm going to make an X. These are those support lines that keep the windmill up. Try and do this part without drawing it with a pencil. This is not showing up as much as I would like it to show up, so I'm going to go back in and put a little bit more yellow-green right here, the top of this one, top of this one a little bit. You want to let some of the sky holes show through. And I think I'm going to put some more vegetation down here. Give the feeling that there are plants back there, trees back there. All right. Now, this is called impressionistic painting. In other words, it's giving you the impression of something, but it's not totally, it's not photographic. It is not meant to be photographic. This is the kind of painting that Van Gogh would love. You would think this was awesome. I'll put a little bit more white on my clouds. There's some squiggly lines here. Try to skip away from this a little bit. A few over here. Just the suggestions. Come back up in here. Once again, I'm just using that 0 brush. Just trying to suggest, do some suggesting of clouds. Not trying to center anything. Keep it off center as much as you can. Now Van Gogh would take red and he would have written his name right here. He would have written Vincent. So, I mean, if you want to pretend that you are Van Gogh and write Vincent or write your name right here in nice red letters, you may do so. If you don't want to do that, but you would like to frame this and hang it in your office or in your home just for fun, I suggest you take black. You need to come up approximately 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. Now, I like to sign my name on the left. And the reason is my name is long. And so I never know how much room to leave if I write it on the right side. So I am going to use my 0 brush once again. Get a little tiny bit of black paint, just a little bit. I'm going to come up approximately about 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to write my name carefully, Charlotte White. Now on the back of your painting, I want you to turn it over and put today's date. You may label it if you choose to, and also write the words acrylic. And the reason that you want to do that is someday your painting might end up on the Antique Roadshow. That's just a joke. And it would be nice if there was identification on the back of the painting. So just do very neat strokes with a zero brush. See how long my first name is? It's at least 2 inches, almost 3 inches long, and I haven't even gotten to my last name yet. You always want to sign your work because you don't want somebody else to claim it. We should be proud of what we do. Now, if you want to, when it was still wet, you could have scratched your name into the wet paint when it was wet. I always put a copyright symbol after my name, even though it's not truly copyrighted. It's copyrighted as far as I'm concerned. Okay. We have finished our painting for today. If you want it to be shiny, once it's totally dry, you may varnish it with a Damar varnish. If you like it dull, which acrylic paints normally are not shiny, they're normally dull, and they have a matte finish, then you can leave it as it is. But it's totally up to you. If you want to varnish it and have it shiny, then of course you're going to need a Damar varnish, and that was not on your shopping list for this assignment. All right, once again, my name is Charlotte White. I live in Bakersfield, California. I would love to meet all of you online. I also teach a free watercolor class at noon on Wednesdays. Since COVID started, I've been doing watercolor online, and every week we paint a watercolor in 2 hours, which is really hard to do. And so if you're interested in that class, you'll need to contact Wayland and talk to Teresa at the alumni office. Those of us who went to Wayland, we all have fond memories of those times. So goodbye, thank you for coming today, and enjoy your painting. Bye-bye.